Hello, my name is Colin, and this is part two of the Spitalfields tour. We did part one before, and we finished off here in Fashion Street, if memory serves. So I thought I'd pick up where we left off, and we'll start walking up towards Brick Lane. Okay, alright then, let's see how we go. Oh, horse and trap, not often you see that. Up in Brick Lane. Now, one of the things that you notice when you come to Brick Lane around this area is there's lots of street art. And here's an example here. And you can't do street art tours, but not with me. But I do like street art. So as I say, this is Brick Lane. I'll just take you around to the right. So just over there on the left hand side is Chickson Street. And Chickson Street gets a mention in literature because that was one of the places where Count Dracula used to keep one of his spare coffins. He had several of them dotted around London just in case he couldn't get to his main one. And Chickson Street being one of the in an area like this, which was a bit down at heel at the time, would have been one of the places that he had them based. No doubt it was cheap to keep it there because the rents would have been a bit low then. So as I say, this is Brick Lane, and this gets its name from the fact that in days gone by, several hundred years ago, and really came to prominence after the Great Fire of London 1666, there was a big demand for bricks to build the houses going forward. After the fire, they wanted to build houses out of brick instead of wood, and they needed lots of it, and there was a brick kiln out this way, and this was the lane that led to it, hence Brick Lane. Sometimes there might be a bit of history behind the names, if not a great deal of imagination. Now, we have two bits of history here. This is Fournier Street, sort of more recent history. This building, the reason it looks so new compared to the rest of the street is because it was destroyed in the Blitz in the 1940. Whereas this building here, and if I just tilt up, there we go, get in the whole bit with that religious symbol of the mosque. So this is the Jam Masjid Mosque. I apologise for the pronunciation if I've got it wrong. But if there is one building in Spitalfields that basically symbolises the waves of immigrants that have come to the area, it's this place, because this is the only building in the country that has been a place of worship for both, or for Christian, Jewish and Muslim faiths. So originally, 1743, it was built by the Huguenots for Christian worship, and then in 1809 it was taken over by a group called the London Society, and the London Society, I think it was part of the Wesleyan outlook, and their mission was to try and convert people from the Jewish faith to the Christian faith. And for 10 years they ran this place, and they spent thousands, because what happened was they would basically offer people who converted from Judaism to the Christian faith, they would offer them £50 for converting. And they spent thousands of pounds doing this, and in the end they had 16 completed converts, because basically what would happen is people would take the money and then come back to them and say, actually I think I've changed my mind, I'm going to go back to the Jewish faith. And so it had, shall we say, limited success. So it did that for 10 years. Then in 18 19, the Methodists took it over, and they ran it for about the next 80 years. And then in 1897, with the build-up of the Jewish community in the area, it became a synagogue. And so it was the main synagogue, certainly in Spitalfields. And then from 1975, it has been a mosque, because the Jewish community started dwindling, and with the influx of Bangladeshi immigrants of Muslim faith, they sort of became the dominant faith in the area, and so they took over and bought out the building. And at the top, it's a bit of a pun. It says Umbra Sumus, which is Latin, and it basically means we are shadows, and the pun being that it's on a sundial. In that situation. And Umbra Sumus, if you're wondering, basically means we are shadows, which is very much a tenet. I think it's in Ecclesiastes, but it's a tenet of religious belief that you're here for a short period of time and then you're gone. And let's face it, isn't that what Shakespeare said as well? Now, I'm just going to show you these buildings, because these are very typical of the weavers' houses that were built in the 1700s. So what you got to appreciate with all these houses, if I just hold on, let me just see. Just going to change what the camera's doing, because I'm trying to pan left and it's just sticking where it is. So hold on. Right. So like if I show you like these buildings here, you would think they're all built at the same time, but actually they weren't. They were all built in sort of lots. So they were built individually, and they do go back quite a way. If you ever get the chance to see, the back of them, like I've sort of looked that gateway that's over there. Hold on, my camera's doing very weird stuff. Yeah. So yeah, I've looked in between the gates of that gateway there. That does go way back, and that Schwartz was once a Jewish dairy. So there's a bit of evidence of the Jewish history of the area. But one of the other things I wanted to show you was that building there above, in the green one, just above it. Let's see. Let me come a bit closer. Just above the window, the bit of brickwork to the left of the white alarm sign. I don't know if you can see, there is a very small symbol, and it's like a sundial, and underneath it I think it says 1810, and that is a fire insurance policy. So prior to the fire service existing, you could organise private fire insurance, and basically if a fire went up, you would put out the word. The fire insurance company would come to put out the fire, but it wasn't unheard of for the fire insurance company to come out, have a look at the plaque on your wall and basically say, hold on, your policy's not with us, you're with a different company, and then leave your house to burn down. So they were a bit ruthless about it. The other thing to notice, and you probably see it more if I step back, is the level of windows at the top. Now they are called garrets, and the reason you've got all those along the top of the building is because that was where the weavers used to do their work. So basically they were trying to get as much natural light into the buildings for as long as possible each day, because they obviously didn't have electric light in those days, they had candlelight, and they were doing weaving, and some of the designs would be very intricate, and they would need as much natural light as possible. And so the work would go on at the top. The people who lived in the house would live in the middle floors, and the ground floor was the showroom. So that was basically the setup. The other thing you would have seen if you were here then would be lots of bird cages along outside the garret windows. Because much like the way people like to listen to the radio today while they're working, the people, the weavers, used to like listening to the lovebirds singing their songs. And so they were known for that. You know, there'd be lots of cages with lovebirds in them, chirruping away. So I'm sure it would have been quite noisy walking along here then. That drain pipe there, the one you can see opposite, has got the date 1725 at the top of it. So as I say, Esports, hold on, let me just come back down. Oh, Esports was a local dairy, no doubt horse-drawn. This building here, number 14, which was basically gentrified a few years ago, used to have some of the original features, including another fire insurance badge, but all the features have been taken away by whoever did it up. Number 14 is reputed to be where Queen Victoria had her wedding dress woven. So, very beautiful house. Just a pity about they lost all the features. Number 12 here. Don't know if any of you are into your conceptual art, but the artists Gilbert and George, this is where they live, and no doubt do their work. Number 2 here is the rectory, where the Reverend lives, who is the Reverend for Christ Church there, which we'll come back to. Now, if you look up, I just show you. If you look up there, above number 17 there, you can see there is a spool hanging outside the wall on the first floor. And that is because in the old days, that would have signified that this was a weaver's house. In the same way that a red and white pole these days might signify a barber's, that would have shown you that it was a weaver's house, a business, and therefore if you wanted some cloth made, that would be the place to go into. Now we're going to go into Wilk Street. So as you can see, very pretty, lots of plants these days. Wasn't always the case, but it's very nice now. And then we're going to go into Princelet Street. There's obviously a lot of work going on. Now this building here used to be owned by the manager of the nearby Truman Brewery, which was a very big concern. These days, it's used a lot in sort of the interiors for movies and the like. The exterior here, although it looks very distressed and run down, I can't tell you the amount of times I've come up this way and found a photographer doing stuff or models being photographed up against it. Always reminds me a bit of Venice. If you've ever been to Venice and you're up to it face to face, it looks like it's falling apart, but whenever you take photographs of it, it looks absolutely lovely. And that's how I feel about this building. So like I say, popular site for photographs and models, and the interior, because it's still pretty much as it was, is used a lot for movies these days. I think The Woman in Black had some scenes set here, amongst many others. Okay. One of the other things I was going to show you is on the ground here. I'll just see if I can show you. Well, can you see? So just behind that black bollard, there is like a coal hole, and on the coal hole there is a shape of it's like a viola or maybe a violin, cello maybe. And the reason that's there, it was a scheme by Tower Hamlets, who had a local engineer turned artist who created these coal hole covers, and they would signify different aspects of the history of the area. And the reason why that one is here is because in this building, well, like I say, it's modern now. If I step back, you'll see it's another one, probably another Blitz victim. It's very modern compared to the one next door to it. So, yeah, so you can see the Truman owner's house, traditional, then this one, very modern. And the reason that coal hole cover is there is because there was a thing here called, in the 1880s, called the Hebrew Dramatic Society. And it could hold several hundred people, and it had a full orchestra, and there would be people doing like variety acts and all that sort of thing. And it was a family called the Adlers that ran it all. But it only lasted about a year, because in 1887, some wit basically during one of the shows shouted out fire, and there was a huge scramble for everybody to get out, even though there wasn't a fire, and 17 people died, and that put an end to the theatre. And the Adlers went off to America, and I believe did quite well on the variety circuit in America. But that's why that symbol is there. And if I just show you, I don't know if you can, how well you can see it, but you can see how far back this goes. You see, it's quite long. Don't know how well you can see that. There is one funny story about those coal hole covers. Some tour guides apparently are going around telling people that the reason why there are logos in the coal hole covers is because they date from Victorian times. Now, Victorian times, you're talking sort of 1840 to early 1900s, and they're telling people that it was because people couldn't read and write, and it would help them work out, what was in the building. And I read a interesting interview with a guy who was interviewing the man who designed them, and he was a former engineer turned artist, and he got the commission to do these coal hole covers. And whilst he was being interviewed about it, he heard a tour guide telling people this, and he stepped outside and said, actually, I designed that on my kitchen table in 1997, which I thought was quite funny. Now, this building here used to have a little sign in the window. It doesn't anymore. This was known, it still is no doubt, the Museum of Immigration. And it very much run on a shoestring budget, number 19 Princelet Street. But it's also famous, and in fact the reason why it's the Museum of Immigration is because of an incident regarding a Jewish scholar called Rudinsky. And there is a book and a whole story called Rudinsky's Room. And essentially what happened was he was living here with his mother and sister, and then I think they moved away or possibly died. He was left here on his own, and the rents must have been absolute minimal, because he then disappeared and nobody noticed for a couple of years until some builders were sent in by the owner to do some work. And it looked like he had literally done a Star Trek transportation job. His breakfast was still on the table, the mug, everything was still there, as if he had just suddenly vanished. The builders even claimed you could still see the imprint of his head on the pillow where he had been sleeping, and then he had gone. And then there was a whole mystery as to where he had gone, and the Rudinsky's Room book was all about the search to try and find out what happened to him. And essentially what had happened, despite it taking them off to various parts of the country and other countries. I believe he had died of cancer in a hospice down in one of the southern counties of England. But the fact that he had been gone for probably a couple of years without anybody noticing sort of made people realise that people could fall through the cracks of society and not be noticed. And hence the Museum of Immigration came about for people like him, just being, trying to sort of make sure that that didn't happen again. So as I say, it does run on a shoestring budget. Now, like I was saying earlier, one of the things about Brick Lane in the area is street art, lots of it. So here's some more here. You see it dotted all over the place. As you can see, some of it's quite current. So yeah. This one's quite famous. This appears on a lot of street art websites. There seems to be a definite increase in the paper art, there's a word for it which I can't think of. But basically poster art, that sort of thing, as opposed to the painting. Maybe it's cheaper. Right, so we're back up on Brick Lane. Brick Lane is very much known for street market, lots of food shops, lots of retail outlets of all sorts, just a whole mishmash of cultures and various shops all dotted along here. You can see the big walkway over that says Truman, and that was the brewery. There was a brewery here from about 1620, and then Truman took it over, I think it was 1770s, I think. But by 1873, this was apparently the biggest brewery in the world. And then it died a death in the 1980s. And now, as I say, it's filled with all these pop-up shops. It's a big draw tourist market. There's a big food hall in there. All sort of foods from all around the world in there. Now, the local council has apparently been inclined to accept a planning development for this to be turned, all this, the Truman Brewery, all this, the food hall, all the rest of it, to be flattened and turned into yet another bland corporate shopping mall, which would no doubt send the rates for all the local shops and restaurants through the roof and kill off the whole area. So there is a bit of a campaign against it, despite the fact that the council seems to be leaning towards accepting it. So let's hope that the fight wins. It's looking like rain. Let's see how much more we can get done. Now just over here on the right, this is Hanbury Street. And it used to be nice and handy because it used to be all these windows had the numbers of the buildings and about numbers about 3 feet tall in the windows. Oh, there's 25. That's handy. So I think probably this one here, it says YMC, depending on which direction we're going, of course. But for any of you into your Jack the Ripper, this is where one of the victims was found, number 29 Hanbury Street, and her name was Annie Chapman, and she was one of the earlier victims of the Jack the Ripper. So for any of you that are into that, I can't say I'm not that much, but that's where she was found. Now, this building is Hanbury Hall, and it's closed now. And there's it looks like it's maybe open for events. A while ago, a few years ago, it was a cafe in there, which was nice, but looks like that didn't last. But it says here, this sign, Hanbury Hall, built 1719 as a French Huguenot church, used by the La Patent Church, no doubt that's supposed to be pronounced in French, 1740 onwards, John Wesley preached here. 1787 it became a German Lutheran church, used by the Baptists, then the United Free Methodists. Charles Dickens gave public readings here. 1887 Christ Church bought the building as its church hall. In 1888 Annie Besant and Eleanor Marks Aveling held the Matchstick Girls strike. You okay? All right. No problem. Held the Matchstick Girls strike meetings here, which helped to establish the British trade unions. Throughout its life, this hall has served church, community and nation. So, yeah, the Annie Besant and Eleanor Marks, the Matchstick Girls strike, that was where the girls were striking because they were working at the matchstick factory, and the sulphur from the matches, I think they had to do something with licking out the end of the matches as part of the process, and it used to cause their jawbones to rot. And obviously they had to hump about that and decided to strike, ask for better conditions. And so in terms of trade union, it's one of the sort of early big fights, and I'm pleased to say that they were successful as well. Now let's see. I'm gonna come down. Oh, okay. So, some nice street art up there. And cyclists, no doubt. I don't know, Rafa, is that don't know if that's a person or a brand. But I like the skull with the frog on it. So we're going to go back down Wilk Street. I took some people on a tour around here recently, well today to be honest, and what I was pointing out to them was one of the things that I first noticed about Wilk Street was the door knockers. I'll show you what I mean, because they're a bit, unusual. So you got this one with the big stag's head on it. I think that's quite cool. And we've got several along this side with a hand. That looks like an animal's face with a hand coming out of it. It's almost like it's being ate. And that one's got a very big hand on it, very intricate. There's a smaller one with a hand on it. Yep. And now we're going to go down into Puma Court. And because it's definitely feeling like a rain starting, and even though I'm waterproof, my equipment isn't, I think we'll have to call an end to this one. So I'll stop here. Let me just see. Okay, that's it. Part 2 of Spitalfields, only one more part to go. Hope you like it. If you do like this sort of stuff, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And hopefully I'll see you on the next one. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you then. Bye.